The scream was dry. Lucas was pulled away by the arm, his eyes fixed on the ground, stifling his sobs. The flight attendant murmured, "Rules are rules," while the passengers looked away. No one imagined that this boy, so silent, was the son of the man who would bring the entire airport to a standstill. The leather of the chair was still creaking when the captain approached. Steady footsteps on the navy carpet, impeccable uniform, chin held high. The air conditioning hummed softly, but the silence weighed more heavily. Lucas was rocking slightly, his fingers tapping in a rhythm only he knew. Rebecca was adjusting her son's headphones when the commander's shadow fell over them. "This behavior is incompatible with the security protocol." The voice cut through the air like a blade. The man pointed discreetly at Lucas, who was now pressing his palms against his ears, muffling the noise of the engine. "We can't take off with agitated passengers." The executive jet was teeming with white executives, laptops open, whispers of mergers and acquisitions. No one looked directly, but everyone listened. A woman in a red blazer fiddled with her cell phone, pretending not to see. A man in sunglasses lowered his newspaper just enough to observe. Rebecca took a deep breath, feeling the weight of 9 years of struggle. He remembered Lucas's first words, at age 4, the sleepless nights studying autism, the private consultations that cost him the apartment, the phrase his grandfather always repeated, "Son, when they push you out, you step more firmly on the ground. My son is not agitated. He is regulating himself." Rebecca spoke softly, but firmly. That's how he deals with new environments. The commander crossed his arms impatiently. "Ma'am, rules are rules. Either he calms down, or you disembark." Lucas looked up for the first time, not at the commander, at the oval window, where the clouds waited for him like cotton in the sky. His lips moved silently. "One day I will fly alone." The boy who dreamed of heights was being pushed back to the ground. The jet's aisle seemed narrower on the way down. The metal steps echoed beneath Rebecca's feet, each footfall a drumbeat announcing her humiliation. Lucas walked alongside, his Batman backpack slipping off his shoulder, his eyes still fixed on the ground. The hot wind from the track hit their faces like a slap. Or maybe it was just the feeling of being expelled from a place that should never have rejected her son. Behind them, the door closed with a click definitive. It wasn't a loud sound, but it cut deep. Rebecca felt the stares of the ground staff, some curious, others indifferent. A blonde flight attendant appeared at the small oval window, checking to see if they had really left. Lucas stopped walking and turned back, as if waiting for the door to open again. As if there was still hope that someone would shout, "It was a mistake. Come back." Rebecca held her son's hand tighter than necessary. Grandfather's words echoed in his mind like a mantra. "When they push you out, step more firmly on the ground." She remembered being a child and her grandfather taking her to watch the planes take off at the city's old airport. He would point to the sky and say, "One day, granddaughter, you will be in there." She never imagined she would get there only to be pushed back down to the ground. "Come on, my love," she said, her voice firmer than her heart. "We don't give up flying because of turbulence." Lucas looked up for the first time since his expulsion. His eyes were shining, but not with tears, with something Rebecca recognized, the same stubbornness she had inherited from her grandfather. Mom. Why didn't he like me? The question was simple, without drama, but it pierced like a bullet. Rebecca knelt on the hot road, ignoring the stains the asphalt would leave on her dress pants. "It's not that he didn't like you, son. It's just that some people still haven't learned that being different is being special." They descended in silence, but not in defeat. The departure lounge was buzzing with whispers. Rebecca and Lucas walked between the rows of black leather chairs, carrying their luggage like trophies from a war they didn't choose to fight. The fluorescent lights made everything seem colder, more clinical. Some passengers lowered their gazes as they passed. Others pretended to be too busy with their phones to notice. But there were those who stared directly and silently judged. "Nowadays, anything becomes an excuse," whispered Margaret, an executive in a gray blazer, to her husband beside her. "In my time, children who misbehaved stayed at home." Across the room, Thomas, a black man in a navy suit, looked up from his laptop. He recognized the tone, the posture, the disdain masked by social concern. Marcus, the cleaner, stopped mopping the nearby table and observed the scene intently. Jamerson, the runway agent, crossed his arms and leaned against the glass wall, eyes steady, jaw tense. Rebecca felt the weight of the stairs like acid rain. He remembered his mother saying, "Daughter, they will always find a reason to judge you. Be too well behaved, be too rebellious. The problem is never what you do. It's who you are." Lucas held tightly to the strap of his backpack, his steps small but determined. He didn't fully understand what had happened, but he could feel the tension in the air like an animal scenting a storm. "Mom, why is that lady looking at us like that?" Lucas asked, his voice low but clear. Rebecca knelt beside her son, ignoring the murmurs around her. "Because some people still think they have the right to decide who deserves to be where, my love." A young woman, Sarah, a law student, paused her reading and observed the conversation. Jamerson approached discreetly, as if to listen better. Thomas closed his laptop and listened. "But I didn't do anything wrong," Lucas said, more to himself than to his mother. "I know, son. Sometimes doing nothing wrong still isn't enough. If you've ever seen something like this and remained silent or outraged, comment below, because silence is also a choice." The smell of coffee and anxiety hung in the airport air. Rebecca closed her eyes for a second, letting the memory take over. Suddenly she was back on that March day, 3 years ago. Lucas was 6 years old and holding her hand tightly enough to leave a mark. It was his first flight, a trip to visit his grandmother in Salvador. She remembered the way he pressed his face against the plane window, his eyes wide, watching the clouds like mountains of cotton candy. "Mommy, how come the clouds stay so quiet up there?" he had asked, his voice filled with pure astonishment. "Aren't they afraid of falling?" That day, Lucas wore the giant yellow headphones his therapist had recommended. The other passengers smiled when he waved at the clouds. A flight attendant brought a children's kit just for him. The captain even let Lucas tour the cabin after landing. "You'll be a pilot one day," said the man, bending down to the boy's eye level. Rebecca opened her eyes, feeling the contrast like a punch in the stomach. That same son who had charmed an entire cabin was now being treated as a threat. She remembered the sleepless nights after his diagnosis, the books she'd read about autism, the therapies that had drained the family's savings. She remembered the smell of disinfectant at the public clinic, the hours of waiting, the hope mixed with fear. And she remembered the promise she'd made to herself. "He's going to have all the opportunities I didn't have." "Mommy." Lucas's voice brought her back to the present. "Are we still going to fly again?" Rebecca looked at her son, who was fiddling with his headphones with the same concentration as always. "Of course, my love. Do you remember what you always say when you see a plane?" Lucas smiled for the first time since his expulsion. "One day I will fly alone." "That's right. And that day will come." A tear ran down Rebecca's face, but it wasn't from sadness. It was from the certainty that some dreams are bigger than the people who try to stop them. Some seeds grow even when thrown into dry land. Captain Warren Miller emerged from the hallway leading to the boarding gates. His uniform was impeccable, with 4 gold stripes on his shoulders gleaming under the lobby lights. He walked with the poise of someone whose authority has never been questioned. Shoulders straight, steps measured, chin held high. Around him, passengers crowded curiously, some whispering, others discreetly recording on their cell phones. The echo of his heels on the marble floor announced his arrival like war drums. "I need to clarify what happened," Miller said loudly, addressing the onlookers as if it were a press conference. "A corporate environment demands composure. Safety protocols exist for a reason. We can't put 60 passengers at risk because of emotional crises." The word crisis was poisonous, full of contempt disguised as technical concern. Amanda Rodriguez, a reporter from a local channel, waiting for a delayed flight, discreetly began recording. Jamerson, watching from afar, clenched his fists. Sarah, the law student, rose from her chair. Rebecca felt anger rise in her throat like bile. She remembered the time Lucas's teacher said he disturbed the harmony of the classroom. She remembered the stares at the supermarket when Lucas had a sensory crisis. She remembered all the times her son's needs were turned into a social inconvenience. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory. "Daughter, they will try to make you believe that the problem is you. But always remember, whoever is afraid of a different child is the one who has the problem." Comandante Miller. Rebecca approached, her firm voice cutting through the murmur of the crowd. "You speak of risk as if you knew what it was." The man turned, surprised by the interruption. "Madam, risk is growing up without permission to exist. Risk is your child being treated as a threat for breathing differently. Risk is discovering that the world still thinks some people are worth less than others." The lobby fell silent. Amanda Rodriguez held her phone closer to better capture the audio. Lucas held his mother's hand, looking directly at Miller for the first time. "Do you have children, Commander?" Lucas asked, his voice small but clear. Miller hesitated. The innocent question cut deeper than any accusation. Sometimes, the ones who really fly high are the ones who never leave the ground. The first cell phone vibrated like a whisper. At the next table, Thomas's phone vibrated against the glass. Then another, and another. A low buzzing began to fill the lobby, like invisible bees suddenly waking up. Amanda Rodriguez glanced at her own phone screen and frowned. Sarah, the law student, received a notification and looked up, confused. The air conditioning continued its steady hum, but something had changed in the atmosphere. The mechanical voice of the sound system cut through the growing murmur. "Attention, passengers. All flights are temporarily suspended for national security reasons. Please await further instructions." The lobby came to a standstill. Conversations broke off mid-sentence. Executives looked up from their laptops. Entire families glanced at each other in confusion. Miller paled visibly, his erect posture faltering for the first time. Security guards began appearing at the main entrances, not rushing, but with a clear purpose. Jamerson approached discreetly, as if sensing something bigger happening. Rebecca felt her stomach churn, but not from fear. It was a strange feeling, almost like déjà vu. He remembered when Samuel worked in airport security, years ago, before his promotion to international consultant. He remembered the late-night phone calls, the emergency meetings, the protocols he could never fully explain. "Sometimes things stop because someone very important is arriving," he used to say. Lucas let go of his mother's hand and walked to the large glass window that overlooked the track. She placed her small palm against the cool glass and smiled. The first genuine smile since they'd stepped off the plane. "Mommy," he said without taking his eyes off the aircraft parked on the runway. "Dad is here." Rebecca felt her heart race. Not in surprise, but in recognition. "How do you know, my love?" Lucas pointed to a black helicopter landing on the executive runway, away from the commercial planes. "Because when Daddy arrives, everyone stops flying." Miller looked in the direction the boy was pointing, and for the first time since this whole situation began, his face showed something other than arrogance, genuine concern. Some storms arrive silently, but everyone feels the wind shifting. Automatic doors opened like theater curtains. Two men in black suits walked first, their gazes intently sweeping the lobby, chests puffed out, hands close to their coats. Behind them, Samuel Ventura entered with the presence of someone who never needed to shout to be heard. Black, tall, broad-shouldered, with graying hair at the temples. His civilian attire was impeccable, but his military bearing was still evident in every step. The echo of leather soles on marble sounded like hammer blows. The entire lobby fell silent. "Where is my son?" The deep voice cut through the silence like a blade. Samuel stopped in the center of the lobby, his eyes scanning faces until he found Miller. The commander instinctively recoiled, the uniform that once symbolized authority now resembling a child's costume. Jamerson straightened, recognizing the posture of a superior. Amanda Rodriguez discreetly brought her cell phone closer, knowing she was witnessing something historic. Samuel looked at his son and felt his chest break. Lucas ran toward him, his little arms spreading like wings. The hug was silent, but it said everything. Samuel remembered the nights he spent away, the missions that kept him away from his family, the promise he'd made to himself. "My children will never go through what I went through." He remembered his own father, who cleaned offices at night so Samuel could study. The old man would repeat the phrase, "Son, you will get where I never got. But never forget where you came from." Samuel knelt down, getting to Lucas's eye level. His large hands held his son's small face with a tenderness that contrasted with the tension of the room. "Are you okay, champ?" "Now yes, Daddy," Lucas whispered. "They didn't want me to fly." Samuel stood slowly, his eyes meeting Miller's for the first time. The silence was so thick he could hear people breathing. "Someone here needs to review their protocols," Samuel said, each word measured and precise, because kicking an autistic child off a flight isn't safety. It's institutionalized cruelty. Miller opened his mouth to respond, but no sound came out. Thomas, who had been watching from afar, rose from his chair. Sarah began to applaud slowly. Jamerson smiled for the first time that day. If it were you, what would you do when you saw this scene? Because sometimes being a witness also means choosing a side. Amanda Rodriguez's cell phone flashed 3 times in 5 seconds. Notifications of likes, shares, comments. The footage she'd posted on social media was exploding. The number of views was skyrocketing. 3,000, 8,000, 15,000. The low sound of vibrating cell phones filled the lobby again, but this time it was different. It was the sound of collective outrage spreading across the internet like wildfire. An airline employee rushed over, tablet in hand, face pale. "Mr. Miller, I need to speak with you urgently," she whispered, but loud enough for everyone to hear. "The company's statement has already been released. You've been temporarily removed, and there are reporters arriving. Lots of reporters." Miller looked around like a cornered animal. Margaret, the executive who had whispered, "Apologies," now looked away and nervously fiddled with her cell phone. Thomas approached Samuel and extended his hand in respectful greeting. Jamerson walked over to Lucas and knelt. Jamerson remembered his own son, also autistic, also misunderstood, of the times when he needed to be stronger than his tiredness, more hopeful than his despair. He remembered his mother saying, "My son, sometimes we plant trees that only provide shade for other people's children." He knew this moment was about more than Lucas. It was about all the children yet to come. "Do you like planes?" Jamerson asked Lucas, taking a small keychain out of his pocket. "I love planes," Lucas replied, his eyes shining. "One day I will fly alone." "I know you will." Jamerson placed the keychain in the boy's small hand. "And when you fly, you will open the sky for other boys like you." A girl of about 8 years old, who was watching everything with her parents, let go of her mother's hand and approached Lucas. "My brother is different too," she said simply. "He would like you." Samuel watched the scene with his chest tight with pride. Rebecca held her husband's hand, sensing something bigger was happening. "Thanks," Samuel said to Jamerson, "for seeing my son when others chose to ignore him. Share this story, because every time it's told, another door opens for someone like Lucas." 3 hours later, Lucas walked down the aisle of another plane. This time, there was no rush, no judgmental glances. The pilot, Captain Johnson, a black man with gray hair, had personally invited Lucas to see the cockpit. The yellow headphones hung around the boy's neck. Unnecessary now, the world finally sounded on the right frequency. Through the oval window, the clouds seemed whiter, closer, as if waiting for him. Lucas sat in the co-pilot's chair and placed his small hands on the control stick. Johnson smiled, adjusting the controls so the boy could fly the plane on the ground. In the cockpit, Lucas was just a child fascinated by airplanes, not a problem to be solved, not a threat to be controlled. He was exactly what he had always been, a boy who dreamed of heights. Rebecca watched through the half-open cabin door, her heart overflowing. He remembered the phrase his grandfather always repeated, "Natinya, victory isn't just about getting where you want to be. It's about paving the way for those who come after you." She knew this moment wasn't just about Lucas flying. It was about all the autistic children who would now have a precedent, a story to tell, a door that had opened. "Commander," Lucas said, looking at Johnson with adult seriousness, "can I make the announcement?" Johnson laughed and handed the microphone to the boy. The small voice echoed through the booth. "This is, Flight 001. Co-pilot Lucas speaking. We're ready to fly high. And remember, everyone deserves to fly, no matter how different they are. Thank you for flying with us. Spontaneous applause echoed through the cabin. A woman wiped away a tear. An executive stopped typing to applaud. Samuel, seated in the front row, felt his chest swell with ancestral pride. At the window, Lucas drew a wing with his finger on the fogged glass. Rebecca came closer and whispered, "You didn't just fly, my love. You paved the way for others to fly, too." Lucas smiled. That smile she had known since she was a baby, pure, genuine, unstoppable. "Mommy, now I know why Daddy stopped all the planes." "Why, son?" "So everyone could see that we have wings, too." Subscribe and share this story. Because when a black person rises, the whole sky changes color.